missed out on one of the most important part, which is our citizens. The cities that we have built, done with looking at the needs of our citizens, how are they built across and how is it pulled through?
Understand how historically cities or rather settlements were built. So historically settlements were based on the needs of the settlers, and in most cases the settlers would determine their settlement planning tools responding to the needs of the host environment. I think this is a very clear fact that we all have learned in our exercises, studying Indus Valley civilization, Mughal settlements, whatever you call it. All of those were based on human needs and responded to the needs of the host environment. Now, the so-called organically developed old settlements, these old settlements, they used the response to the host environment as the most important regulatory tool. All the other layers of regulation were need-based. Now, slowly and gradually, the Mughals and British brought new regulatory tools, but they still valued public streets and spaces as tools for governance and administration. Post-independent India, there were multiple challenges that our urban development faced. Two of them was that we needed to grow or build cities very fast. And these cities also had to address the prevailing health and sanitation issues of those times. We went into a mad rush of making cities, making codes, making bylaws. In the understand that we went somewhere wrong, probably because at that point of time, we thought that India is still developing, we have enough land, we could go slow on the urban environment bit, and we may lay more emphasis on resolving the issues of health and sanitation. Now, when in the earlier phases, when the city planning emphasized on health and sanitation issues, it was reflected in the form of distances between buildings, space for fire tender in the building bylaws, building heights were restricted, and there were other norms which were put in building bylaws, essentially not related to the design of the buildings or the public spaces, but more towards ensuring that a quality or safe spaces. The agenda of creating better urban environment was somehow sidelined. In the last few decades, I believe we had the opportunity to look back because of various changes happening in the norms and bylaws and way we are planning everything. And subsequently, the citizens are the ones who started raising alarm bells. Because at the end of the day, the citizens were affected with the quality of urban environment. The citizens per se were not affected by the building bylaws, because the citizens actually have very limited knowledge of building bylaws, or they have very less to do with building bylaws. It's essentially the architects and engineers who are concerned about the building bylaws. Citizens are more concerned about the quality of their buildings and the quality of the public spaces that they're getting. Pollution kept on increasing, congestion kept on increasing, and the citizens started blaming planners, designers, and architects for the mess that was created. And that was a realization. That was not just the realization with the citizens, but that was a realization even amongst the professional community. For a long time, cities were designed to meet housing requirements, roads, power, water supply. But no one asked citizens as to what their needs were. Probably their needs might have been very specific towards urban environment, and we might have been able to mainstream that. But now, with growing awareness, citizens come forward, complain, raise RTIs, and demand for better urban environment. In metropolitan cities like Delhi, Mumbai, and Kolkata, there is another layer where the citizens complain is that they're not getting the right value for the high prices of land that they pay, where planning and design of the cities have failed the citizens. There are ways in which the citizens can get involved, but now I think it's time that citizens are mainstreamed in these kind of planning and decision-making processes.
Is there any provision or legal way in which citizens can be involved in the city planning and design process? Citizens' opinion should matter in the city planning and designs. How can we do this to have more people-centric cities as against the infrastructure-centric cities that we see right
I don't have a clear answer to that, but there are certain provisions in the Constitution and in acts which allow engagement of citizens either directly or through representation. If you remember, 73rd and 74th amendments of Constitution were actually done with the spirit of empowering grassroots and decentralization of power. And it created panchayats, urban local bodies, corporations, etc. with this that the needs of the citizens are incorporated in the governance system through panchayats, through elected bodies, through urban local bodies. Now, subsequently, taking feedbacks in policy and plan formulation was also institutionalized. So if you see any plan, if you see any act being formulated, there's a process of feedback collection in the form of objections, comments, suggestions. Now, taking feedback is significantly different from ensuring citizens' participation in policy formulation, because citizens' participation means that citizens become directly involved in plan formulation and decision making, whereas taking feedback means that the citizens have the right to comment or object on policy and plans. Because of this inherent flaw in public feedback, in most cases, the feedbacks made a very good fight, justification for some decision, while the citizens' concerns were never addressed because we were emphasized on just taking the feedback. Now, if we need the cities for people centered around the citizens' needs, citizens will have to participate in policy and plan formulation processes at all stages, starting from conceptualization to understanding the program for planning, to understand what should be the future of the city, to understand how should it be implemented, to understand how should it be phased. So ideally, citizens' participation requires citizens to be involved in all these phases. That's how internationally citizens' participation is understood. Now, some cities have started using the tools of TP schemes and design charrettes to involve citizens in plan formulation. But we still have a long way to go because we still largely depend on taking feedbacks rather than citizens' participation. We also need to remember that all researchers show that getting constructive inputs through public participation requires around 8 to 9 focused workshops with citizens. Now, this is where we are stuck, because 8 to 9 focused workshop with citizens requires that we first make the citizens aware of the planning exercise, of their needs, of their concerns, bring them to a forum where they can then start contributing positively. Now, in the era when we are in a mad rush of creating cities, the time required for citizens' participation can only be accommodated in project timelines if there is a central act mandating. Otherwise, I don't think any of the agency would have time to give for public participation, because 8 to 10 focus workshop, you have one workshop every month. It requires at least a year only for public consultation and citizens engagement. Else, we can only hope that the leader of the organization making a plan allows citizens to participate in plan formulation. Now, this is where the concerns of having citizens participation in Indian context is stuck. Whether we are able to give that much time or not, who is going to moderate citizens participation, all these minor integrities of citizens participation is what is holding it back from getting mainstream.
If someone wants to move towards involvement of citizens, what would be the pros and cons to that? Like, what are the positives and the negatives to pull in citizens in planning of our city spaces?
As I can understand, there are multiple pros, multiple benefits, but there's only one con. Now, some of the pros are that the citizens become more informed about plans and policies. The citizens participate in the process, and hence the plans become more robust, because then the plans start addressing the actual requirements of the citizen, address the needs of the residents and the visitors, and also meet the aspirations of future generations. Something that we keep forgetting, that cities are not just for current generation, but cities are also for our future generations. And most importantly, people start respecting the provisions of the plan because they've seen how the plan was made. So they become a part of the plan. There's a sense of ownership towards plan. Now, this also results in less violation of the provisions of the plan. And there are more, I can keep naming them. There are more pros to it, but there's only one con. And the con is that it needs good amount of time and mediators to conduct public participation. That is it. So if that is addressed, I believe this whole process of citizens' participation will bring a lot of changes and a lot of benefit for city planning.
Is there any way through which citizens can actually demand to co-opt in city planning and the design processes? To just wrap it
That's
up.
a tricky part. That's a tricky part because officially, there's no such act which says that citizens can co-opt in city planning and design. Through various other tools, for example, RTIs, court cases, going to NGT, through these mechanisms, citizens can definitely get involved and co-opt, but there is no direct method of getting the citizens co-opted in city planning and design processes. Historically, and even till now, city planning and design process is understood and practiced as a top-down process, where the decision makers decide first. The citizens have the option of providing their comments and feedbacks after the decision is being taken. So
Understood.
the mechanism of co-opting needs to be put in place. It still doesn't exist.
Okay. Sounds good. So maybe it's a long way to go forward, and let's see if we can actually in the future have citizens participate in building better